My name is Tricia Rodgers. I am currently a program officer at the Northern Virginia Health Foundation. I've lived in Alexandria on and off since I was 6 months old. I am an Army brat. My father was stationed here throughout his military career. I went to elementary school for part of my elementary school education, and I also graduated from the old St. Mary's Academy on Russell Road. When it was my turn to decide where I wanted to live, I chose to live in Alexandria, and I claim Alexandria as my hometown. Although Alexandria is a city and is one of the most densely populated cities in the United States, when all is said and done, Alexandria is a small town, and it has a small town feel. And that's why I chose to live here. I grew up as the child of children of the Depression. And my sister and I heard stories when we were growing up about hardship and deprivation. And not only stories of my parents' hardship and deprivation, but also of their family members and their neighbors. Accompanying those stories was how neighbors helped neighbors, family members helped family members. And so my sister and I grew up understanding that being part of a community meant that you helped each other, that it was family member helping family member, neighbor helping neighbor. And I think Alexandria is full of extraordinary people who have that same ethic, who understand, who see the possibilities for making the city an even better place for everyone who claims it as their home. Currently, a lot of my work is focused now on childhood obesity. And I currently chair a coalition that is trying to address the childhood obesity epidemic in the city of Alexandria. Several years ago, Inova Health System did a study that showed that 43.5% of children between the ages of 2 and 5 are overweight or obese. That is unacceptable. I am very lucky to be working with, again, some extraordinary people who are very passionate about making sure that children have access to healthy food, that children grow up healthy, because obesity not only can affect health when they're children, but can also have long-term health impacts as children become adults. It's a community coalition made up of about 100 individuals and organizations that have signed on to address the childhood obesity epidemic, and it's called the Alexandria Childhood Obesity Action Network. It is a public and private coalition. The work of the Childhood Obesity Action Network is really focused on children, but a lot of the other work that I have been involved in my career and in my volunteer work in the city has touched on other issues that affect people throughout the lifespan. I'm a master gardener, and I have been a master gardener for too many years than I would like to say. And part of being a master gardener is education. That is what being a master gardener is about. You're trained by Virginia Cooperative Extension to teach people best horticultural practices. There is an opportunity to make healthy food available. People can grow their own food. So some of what we have tried to do as part of the Alexandria Childhood Obesity Action Networks is either establish or enhance existing community gardens so that people can grow their own food. What we did learn is that for some people, growing their own food wasn't enough. They didn't know how to prepare their food in healthy ways. So we were lucky to find chefs who were willing to teach people how to cook food in a healthy way. And there's another fabulous volunteer program from Virginia Cooperative Extension called Master Food Volunteers. And they teach people nutrition, how to cook things in a healthy way. We've had a few Master Food Volunteers actually go to the Old Town Farmers Market and demonstrate healthy cooking practices. A gardener will see an opportunity to grow something anywhere. And a garden doesn't necessarily mean if you're talking about growing vegetables, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a plot, a garden plot. You can grow things in containers. What we did was we approached communities. For example, the first garden that we helped establish was at ARHA. There's a lot of open space in ARHA properties. And we approached ARHA with this idea and said, would you like to turn some of this space into gardens? And there are very experienced residents at ARHA who are fabulous gardeners and who jumped at the opportunity to have their own community garden. We looked for spaces and then had conversations with leadership or residents to see can we help? Master gardeners themselves do not do the gardening. They are there to provide education, coaching, a little guidance. But for a community garden to work, it has to be owned by the community. And so all we do is coach and say, you might want to think about this. You might want to site the garden here, that kind of thing. Alexandria has been named one of America's most playful cities, in large part because of a place-based assessment that the Alexandria Childhood Obesity Network conducted. I didn't know that there were people who did this kind of thing, but they're actually people who make a living, experts, that will go into a community and assess the available play space. I went out with one of these professionals who was looking at existing playgrounds in the city and looking for amenities that exist. Is there shade? There water fountains? Are there benches where parents or caregivers can sit? Is it easily accessible? Can people walk to it? One of the things that we heard from parents and caregivers that they interviewed, that some of the play spaces that existed in the city were not accessible, or they didn't feel comfortable going there. They didn't feel safe being there. So we looked at all of the public and private play spaces in the city, did an assessment, established a report with recommendations, and I'm very pleased to say that with a lot of work from a lot of people, we were able to get City Council to pass a place-based policy that mandates the consideration of play space in all land use. It's not unique, but we are certainly, I think, on the cutting edge in terms of this. And I think the unique thing is that we have data. We actually did an assessment. We heard from parents and caregivers, and then we actually physically went out and looked at the play spaces. There's always more to be done. We continue to try and improve play spaces in the city. We are now working with some of the schools to improve the playgrounds that exist. In terms of gardening, we are always available to, help people if they are interested in establishing a garden or in enhancing a garden. We do see a lot of opportunity in terms of increasing access to healthy food. We are getting ready to release a study on food hardship in the city. And I think many Alexandrians would be surprised to know that there are people who are hungry in the city of Alexandria, who do not have access to healthy food. And that's something that the Alexandria Childhood Obesity Action Network is committed to addressing. The feedback that we have gotten has been extremely positive. I think we are lucky. We are focusing on this effort at a time when there's a lot of national attention on it, and there's also attention at the state level too. So it's something that's in everyone's consciousness that we have an obesity problem, and we have taken a sort of multi-pronged approach to addressing it, because there's not any one thing that's going to fix this problem. It really is a community-wide effort. And as I said, we have over 100 individuals and organizations who are involved in this. It is a collaborative effort. I certainly never thought I would be a living legend. And I'm very honored to have been selected to be a living legend. It's a great project. I think David Speck, who is also a living legend, said the best part of it is the living part of it, and I would certainly agree with him in that. But I think that it is important to recognize people who are standing on the shoulders of people who came before them, but who are also standing shoulder to shoulder with other people in the city who are trying to make it a better place. And this is just a way to recognize those collective efforts. That's an interesting question. First off, I'm not ready to talk about my own legacy. I hope I have a few more years before we're talking about my own legacy. Um, but I do feel very strongly that I have not done anything alone. I would love to claim that I did something singularly, but I have to emphasize again that I stood on the shoulders of people who came before me, and shoulder to shoulder with extraordinary people. I have not done anything by myself. It's been hand in hand with other people in the city. The political boundaries that have been established are really artificial. People who live in the city of Alexandria could move to Arlington, vice versa. You know, there's a lot of in and out migration within the various communities. There are existing anti-obesity efforts in Arlington, in Fairfax, in Prince William County, in the District of Columbia. And I see one of my jobs is to try and connect the dots. And we have invited folks in Arlington to come and speak to our group so that we can learn from them about what they're doing. The Alexandria Childhood Obesity Action Network was lucky to receive a grant from the Centers for Disease Control, where we actually mentored Prince William County's nascent childhood obesity effort. And so we work closely with the folks in Prince William County. We benefit by talking to one another and by learning from each other. Our communities are unique, but they do share some common characteristics, and it just makes sense to work cooperatively across political boundaries. There was an ordinance on the books that prohibited breastfeeding in public. It was never enforced, and in fact, there's a state ordinance which superseded it. But we felt it was important for the city to make a statement. Breastfeeding can have a significant impact not only on a mother's health but also on a child's health, and so that is why it is part of our Childhood Obesity Action Network's efforts. We start our efforts from birth on. I did, in fact, travel all around. I moved to the city of Alexandria when I was 6 months old. And I can't remember how, well, I can't remember, 6 months old. I think we lived here for a couple of years. And then my father was stationed in Japan. So I lived there as a child, came back to Alexandria and stayed here for a while. Then we were sent to France. So I lived there for a while. My father was then sent to Brooklyn, New York, and I went to PS 104 in the shadow of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, home of, what's the name of that movie that John Travolta was in? Saturday Night Fever. Yes, indeed, happened in Bay Ridge, and then my father retired. We moved here, and I continued to stay here with one detour in Arlington. I grew up in a family where service was important. You, it was part of the definition of your life. I mean, one of our presidents said that a definition of a successful life must include serving others, and that's the ethic that I grew up with. So as I volunteered when I was in high school. When I was a student at St. Mary's Academy, I volunteered, and I continue to volunteer. It is true that you gain more than you give when you volunteer, and I have felt that in every volunteer experience that I've had in my life. I do know many of the living legends. Alexandria is a small town. And well, I referenced David Speck. I know many of the nominees, many of the legends. One of last year's legends, I serve on the Partnership for a Healthier Alexandria with, and we support each other's work. I, I think I said this before, but this isn't about me. This is about working in partnership and collaboratively with other people. Anything that I have done with other people. Actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm having a conversation with the director of the health department to see where he thinks my skills and abilities could best be used going forward. I do believe that any community coalition, any effort, you constantly need to bring in new people and bring in new leadership. And I have chaired the Childhood Obesity Action Network for several years. It, it's time for me to move on, and so I'm looking for the next adventure. I don't think I will ever retire from community work. It's part of who I am. It's sort of part of my DNA. What's the Nike ad? Just do it. There are so many opportunities to get involved in activities in the city through service organizations, through faith community. My talking to a 20-year-old is probably not so effective because they find out about things through media that I don't use, I don't understand. But ACT, the Community Foundation, has wonderful is a wonderful resource for opportunities. Volunteer Alexandria is another resource for opportunities. Talking to, living legends. Part of what my job is, and in my professional life, is to talk to people. If they want to get involved in anything that we're involved in, I am happy to talk to them and point them in the right direction.